Okay, guys, so I have downloaded and printed all of the questions you posted on 4.2 module. Sadly, there's only about a third of my English 1A students that did this. That makes me a little bit sad, but I'm going to do the best I can to answer what you asked directly. And then I'm also going to post the transcript of the questions and the answers so that for those of you who are visual learners, you can read my answers and potentially even download it, follow it, print it, follow along with it, take notes on it, annotate it while you're watching my lecture. I also have my little whiteboard so that if I need to demonstrate some stuff, I can. I've looked at the questions, obviously. Some of them are great. Some of them I'm like, were you paying attention? So we're just going to go for it. 4.2, lecture questions number 1. Of course, this is SOAP and specifically the S. The first question that was asked is, how many selves should I answer? The answer is as many as you have experienced. So if I do a list of selves, honestly, I'm at about 91. But, I've been a pet owner. I'm a cat hater. I'm a dog lover. I'm a goldfish killer. I'm a hamster killer. I forget to feed them. I owned reptiles, so I have something to say about that. I am a trampoline owner. We've had 5 trampolines. I have been a motorcycle bike passenger. Gosh, can I tell you a story about when I was on the back of one and we drove to LA in the rain? I was freaking out. Hiker, an activist, a voter, all of these are selves. And when I told you to make a list of selves, I actually meant it. I want you to sit down with a mirror and say to yourself, okay, what have I experienced? Like, I'm a student, right? But that's really general. How many students have I been? I was an island student on Catalina Island, K through 12. There were 300 students there. I was a student in Mammoth Lakes. I got to learn how to ski for PE. So elementary school, middle school, high school. For PE, we played field hockey. I think I have something to say about field hockey because I was pretty good at it for 4 years. I'm an athlete, not just from the field hockey, but I grew up on an island, so I knew how to surf and water ski. In the Marine Corps, I ran, right? So that's a triathlete in a way. Although I've never run a triathlete, I'm the mother of a triathlete. So that's another self because every time she dismounts off her bike, I get nervous. All of these different experiences equal selves. And as you have a new experience, you should add to your list, right? The point of this is to have a tangible list that you can print out, add to, and always refer back to before you start to write. Question 2. Depending on which self we choose, what determines how we express ourselves in the essay? So depending on which self in SOAP we choose, it determines how we speak about the topic. Exactly. Let's take that topic of abortion again, right? So from the perspective of a daughter, it is not my mom's business, and I'm going to write an essay about autonomy and freedom of choice without parental eyes. From the perspective of a mother of daughter, I'm going to write the opposite. I'm going to say that parents need to know no matter what. It's my business what happens to my girls medically, mentally, and emotionally. That's my responsibility. So should I know about it? Hell yes, I should know about it. That's a totally different essay. And it doesn't mean that I don't have the other opinions. I can absolutely argue the morality of abortion, why it's so bad, why it's murder, what the Bible says. Okay, I can tell you that stuff. But I also then later in life took a pledge to defend the Constitution. And I now believe the Constitution protects our freedom of choice regardless of what the Bible says. And so I believe in the Constitution. I believe in freedom of choice, not because of the morality of it, but because I endorse the Constitution and personal autonomy. That's a totally different essay, right? So I can talk about this topic from multiple perspectives. And yeah, it would be a different essay. Let's go from a movie fan. My favorite movie, Dirty Dancing, is focused and centered around the topic of abortion when it was not legal and how dangerous it was, right? so much to say about that. It has nothing to do with the Bible, nothing to do with being a parent, nothing to do with being a daughter. It simply has to do with this really huge elephant in the room the whole entire time in the movie. And it takes a little bit of brain power to figure out what's going on. That's a totally different essay. So, yes, the self you choose determines the essay and the essay voice and the direction. Number 3, in reference to lecture 1, when deciding which self to choose, is it better to choose the self that has better perspective through personal experience or through academic knowledge? And that is a great question. When I choose a self personally, I try to remove bias. Like on my list, if I'm too close to a topic, for example, the drinking age, I took the one with my brother out of it. Even though he died and alcohol was a part of the problem, I'm too close to that. Now, I believe academically I could talk about it, but because it strikes an emotional chord inside of me and I don't want to be emotional or persuasive through emotional bias, yeah, I took that out so that I can speak on it academically from a removed perspective. But still, I have to say, one that I know, one that I lived, and one that I believe in. This is not fiction. You're not making this stuff up. Question 4. Self, should we choose something more personal from a point of view, what we choose to write? I'm not sure what that means. Self is personal. Self is you. Who are you? And what do you have to say about this topic from a perspective of experience? 5. How do I get started to write about the subject that I'm not familiar with? Did you watch my essay lecture? When you have a list of selves and you compare it to the topic, you simply say, okay, out of all of these selves, which one has something to say? And remember, I called it a connection of a voice, not necessarily that it has to be my favorite, not necessarily that I believe or endorse it. It's simply the connection or the angle I'm going to take. That's the voice that's going to talk. You have a self that is familiar or affected by everything. You know someone with depression. You eat food that comes from the ground. You live in a desert that's getting hotter. You drive cars that are consuming fossil fuel. You're surrounded by a society whose politics and racism are affected by pre-Civil War era conversations. What do you mean you have nothing to say about the topic? I can't even imagine a topic that I couldn't find something to say, that it doesn't even make sense to me. I know nothing of anime, okay? But from the perspective of a mother who has children who watch anime, what I know is it's all in writing because it has to be translated. It endorses then the idea of comprehension, and it's one amazing art form. That's all I really know. My paragraphs, then I'm going to research and I'm going to build them, right? Okay. Number 6, how would I go about selecting a perspective I do not know much about or do not really have personal experience with? You don't. Your list of selves should be only things you have experienced, things that you are. You all have experience going to the bank. You all have experience going to the grocery store. You all have experience ordering books and items online. You all have experience in a car, at least as a passenger. You all have experience with things like speed limits and stop signs. You all have experience with grocery stores. Those are selves. And so you pick yourself and you find something to say. 5, how can we decide which self is best to use when addressing our topic? I think I've answered that. Just be honest. Sometimes I challenge myself and say, okay, what would an athlete say about this? Or what would a traveler say about this? Or what do I think about this from a cook perspective? Like in the kitchen, how does this conversation apply to me? But that's your choice. The thing here is you guys are even overthinking the question. Don't overthink this stuff. Look at your list and fucking pick one and then stick to it. That's all I care about. I'm looking that you have the ability to make these choices before you begin to write. This is step 1. Number 9. It says, do we only choose one self to talk about, or can we choose more than one? Yeah, I suppose the idea of a hybrid self is interesting. I might not just go mother, I might say mother of gaming addicted son. Is that more than oneself? I'm not sure. I think that's only oneself talking because all of my moms are separated into different experiences, right? What if I say full time college student? Okay, could I add more selves to that? Well, I suppose I could add adjectives to that self. I'm a first generation college student. I'm the first in my family to even graduate high school college student. I'm the first in my family to get master's degree and have no student loans college experience. But I'm still speaking from the perspective of a college student, and those adjectives add to my description, but they don't change my description. So again, pick oneself and then clearly define why or who you are. Next question. What if I don't have many selves? Will it affect my writing? Absolutely. Life experience is vital to growing into a person, but I don't believe you don't have so many. The stories I hear from my high school kids and even my middle school children are shocking. They are seeing things, hearing things, watching things, and experiencing things that I never had. I never grew up with a cell phone in my pocket. I never grew up having my mom be able to contact me 24 hours a day. I definitely never had online instruction. I definitely never even considered Google or the internet. I typed my essays on a typewriter, for crying out loud. And I'm not that old. So you guys have a whole wealth of experience that is unique to you. If you grew up in a different country, if you grew up with parents who spoke different languages, if you grew up with large family or no family, if you grew up in the foster care system, you have a wealth of experience that not so many people, if we were to divide it all up, can share. Now, you're not the only one, but you're the only one I've met. And so tap into those unique voices. You have something to share, and it's profound, and it gives an interesting angle to these very crazy topics. Next one, ready? I have known that the reader and the audience were two different things, but is there a certain way that differentiates the two from one another? Yeah, anyone can read anything. An audience is chosen. So that's the big differentiation. Now, could you be the audience for Fox News? Sure. Undereducated, on the right side of the political spectrum, maybe overtly or obtusely religious. Maybe you're older white male or female, I suppose, are retired. They have a specific audience they're talking to. Do you fit that audience? And if you do, then you are their audience. Nothing's wrong with that. You just have to say, I'm their audience. And if you're their audience, it's really important to push back and go listen and watch other stuff so that you have a way to balance what you hear, so that you're not just consumed with what feels good. Next one. The lecture one, you would recommend using a self that as a writer I have not experienced. Would you recommend? No, self is about what you've experienced. For example, let's say I want to write from the perspective of a mother, but I'm not one. You can't. We're not creative writing. This is not creative writing. You're not taking on the persona of a mother. That is not the point. Now, what can you do? You can interview mothers. You can write from the perspective of a daughter or son of a mother, and then talk to parents about how they feel about a situation. But if you are not a mother, you cannot speak from that perspective yet. Next one. I know you, Professor Benesh, said that you should commit to one self-perspective while writing, but is it possible to use two if the imagery prompt asks for it? Oh, imaginary prompt asks for it. For example, the prompt discussed the difference and similarities between student athletes and students. If I were presented with that prompt, the answer is that I would probably write from the perspective of a student or a student athlete, whichever one I was truly. And you have the ability to do that compare contrast just by watching. I have never been a student athlete. I am an athlete, but I have never been a student athlete, so I can't speak from that perspective. What I can tell you from a professor perspective or from a student perspective is that student athletes seem to miss a lot of class because of games and travel and meetings. Student athletes seem like a lot of them are far away from home because they traveled from out of state to come play for COD. So they're isolated from family and a support system. That leaves them vulnerable to peer pressure, to financial worries that other students may not have because they live at home. They have local family and friends who are supporting them. So, can I discuss the similarities and differences between these two classifications of people? Yes, but would I want to speak from the perspective of simply one? My answer is yes. Pick a perspective and stick to it. Remember adjectives not to be confused with self. Next question. For self, I experience some stuff, but there's a lot of things I need to experience in life to gain more selves to write from. Is there any specific methods to help think of more selves? Because I get stumped after only a few. Well, I think this video has already added to your list, right? Have you ever gone grocery shopping? That's a self. Have you ever babysat? That's a self. Have you ever been babysat? That's a self. Have you ever gone on vacation? That's a self. Have you ever gone on an airplane? That's a self. Have you ever been on a boat? That's a self. Have you ever made sandcastles? That's a self. Have you ever walked on a beach and been disgusted by the trash? That's a self. Have you ever rode public transportation, a subway, a train? Those are all selves. Have you ever been the middle child, the oldest child, the youngest child? Those are selves. Have you ever been sick as hell with the flu? That's a self. Have you ever gone to the doctor and the doctor can't solve your problem? That's a self. Have you ever gone to the doctor and thought you wanted to be a doctor? That's a self, right? Like, these are all selves. Have you ever broken a bone? That's a self club, right? Not everybody in the universe can talk about breaking bones. They've never done it. So unless you've broken a bone, you have no idea how it feels. Kidney stones, having a baby, same thing. I think that we have to be honest with our experience, but think about and watch what you do in one day's time, and you're going to come up with 25, 30 selves. 14. I understand that writers may have different connections toward a topic. However, how do you know which one is best perspective to pick the topic? Is there a right or wrong answer? Remember the triangle exercise I had you do? I had you come up with 3 random words for a word: pet, small, medium, large. Some of you said fish, cat, frog. Some of you said horse, dog, and snake. Others of you said expense, exercise, and vet bill. My words are always going to be different than your words. So is there right or wrong? No. Who's more right? Nobody. Don't overthink this stuff. A's come from content, not from, A's come from structure, not from content. Nobody actually cares what you're going to say. I've read so many essays that nothing new comes across my desk. Like, I hate reading essays, frankly. All I'm looking for is the structure that I'm teaching, because if you can learn the structure, you can write anything for anybody. Don't overcomplicate things. You are not teaching your professors. You're simply doing the tasks that's being asked so that they know you've read the material. In my case, you're doing the task that's being asked and so that I know you know the structure, so that I know you know citation. Next question. Do we have to write different essays with different selves, or does that just depend on us? Well, I'm only wanting one 5-paragraph essay. Do another 4,822 potential essays exist if I were to do every self times 2 opinions times an audience time? Of course, I could have an endless amount of essays. That's what makes it so complicated, actually, is that there are endless possibilities. It's much harder to choose one and stick to it, and that's what I'm testing you on. 17. Does conscious writing guarantee a great essay? I'm going to argue yes. Great writers think about their writing. Great writers make discussion. You've probably heard that natural talent is no indication of success. The best athletes are not natural talent athletes. They're athletes that bust their ass, that practice every day, that listen to their coaches. Their recent new coach that they have now, not the coach that they had when they were 5, right? Every time you take a step toward being more advanced, more mature, more professional, the coach is going to demand more and change things up and complicate things. I'm the newest coach. I don't give a shit what your ninth grade teacher taught you. I don't care what your English 51 teacher taught you. I'm teaching you how to write for university, and I'm looking to see if you're using my technique. I'm the coach of today. So, yeah, should you be conscious about it? Absolutely. Next one. How can soap help us become better writers? I feel like that question is a little bit offensive, actually, and I'll tell you why that's my answer. Why is making decisions about anything, actually, how does it make you a better fisherman? Having your toolbox and your tackle box and the map next to you. Doesn't that make you a better fisherman? If I'm going to cook dinner, doesn't it help if I have the ingredients and I thought about what I needed before I have everything ready? A better parent. The more you know about kids and psychology and the brain and development and discipline and parenting styles, the better off as a parent you'll be. Doesn't it make you better to make those choices in advance? So how can soap make us become better writers? Well, SOAP just stands for the 4 choices you make before you begin to write. And anytime you're making choices before you begin something, the product is better. Writing is not and should not be accidental. It should be purposeful, it should be intentional, and it should be a result of conscious dictation. 19. What selves are actually relevant in school environment? All of them. Let's just play a little game real quick. Are you a veteran? Yeah, so that's relevant. Are you a mother? Yep, that's relevant. Are you disabled? Yep, that's relevant. Are you someone who has a lot of bills? Yep, that's relevant. Are you someone who doesn't have a lot of time? Yep, that's relevant. Are you someone who has no transportation? Yep, that's relevant. Are you someone with broken transportation? Yep, that's relevant. Do you have to choose between your books and your utility costs? Yep, that's relevant. Do you have shitty internet? Yep, that's relevant. Like, all of these things are relevant. Every self has something to say within a school environment because we are living in the environment. School is not real. School is this pretend make-believe bubble that when you finish the game, that degree is going to help you maximize your money. School does not equal success. You equal success, and that means your environment is relevant. Can you use more than one self if they're related to the topic? I kind of addressed this already. I suppose if you really wanted to hybrid it, can't think of an example right now. Let's say, I'm a natural blonde, so I can speak from the perspective of a dumb blonde, and I happen to be a 4.0 student. So what happens when you're blonde and in school? Weird, right? I would just speak from the perspective of a student who has to overcome stereotypes, and that's something everybody can relate to. Next one. What if I want to talk about different perspectives since they all have the same idea about the problem? Is there any specific kind of essay that allows using multiple self-perspectives? A long one. If I'm writing a 60-page essay, I might give each self, maybe 4 of them, a chapter, right? 10 pages. But why would you do that even still? Because there's so much to say just from one. I suppose if you're writing fiction, multi-perspective books are interesting, and the one you're reading right now is a multi-perspective book, but that is fiction, and I'm teaching expository writing. I'm teaching you academic prose, research writing, so it doesn't really apply. How important is it to keep the rules of SOAP? I can only speak from my personal experience and from the perspective of someone who is going to hold your grade in my hand. This is your 4-unit transfer level university course. To do well in it is imperative. Universities look at this course above all else to see if you can read, write, communicate, and research. And because I'm asking you to learn it and use it, that makes it important. That's a little bit of an appeal to authority fallacy, right? Because I said so. So beyond that, everything that I encounter in life, I go through SOAP. Before I speak to my kids, I find my voice. Before I speak to my doctor, I find my voice. Before I speak to my priest, I find my voice. Before I speak to my boss, I find my voice. That way I'm not confusing the issue. I figure out what I'm trying to say, who is my audience, and what is my purpose, and then I tackle it in that manner. So I believe they're very important to life in general. Can you provide information about more than oneself throughout the essay? Well, you can assume in your framework. You can talk about what others feel, think, believe, in a suggestive manner. That's totally fine. But really, the voice that's writing the essay should not change. You should pick one and stick to it. Do we have to identify our perspective? It should be implied, and it should be implied in several places. I should be able to know what your perspective is in a general way through the title. Who would say that title? I should know what your perspective is in your framework because it's a conversation between self and audience. Your opinion might very well say what perspective you're speaking from. So, for example, for this essay, if I'm going to tackle, let's say, what surfers need to know, right? That's myself. So here's my triangle. I'm going to say that in the Society of Surfers, the knowledge they need is of the ocean, the board, and I'm just going to say equipment, EQUIPT, and beach etiquette. Those are my body paragraphs, right? And so each one, beach etiquette includes trash, includes how to leave your items behind, and includes working hours. Equipment includes board, resin, things like fin and leash. And ocean includes current, wildlife, and let's say geological features like rocks and coral reefs and such. Okay, so there's my essay. In my introduction, I'm going to give a quote about the ocean being the best place to be. My framework is going to talk about the history of surfing. And I'm going to then say that new surfers wanting to break into the sport must know the ocean, their equipment, and beach etiquette. And of course, those become my topic sentences, right? So I'll let you look at that real quick. Does it answer about educated society? Absolutely. I'm talking about knowledge within a society. And my conclusion is going to be about the future of the sport and the specific items that I've brought up, right? What will global warming, how will that affect our ocean life, our wildlife, and our currents, specifically the storms, for example. The equipment is ever changing. We have different long board, short board, fiberglass boards, but we have new boards that are coming out that are quite lightweight. And is that good or is that bad? And then, of course, the beach is changing. People are changing. Pollution is changing our access. Mansions are changing our access. Laws are changing our access. So I have a lot to say about the future there. And so I think that once I have this plan and I have my essay, well, that's SOAP in action, right? And who I'm speaking to is implied, new surfers. And what perspective am I speaking from? An old surfer, right? Someone who's been on the ocean since I was young. The next question says, last question, who came up with the formula and does it have a name? I came up with the formula. I believe I explained that actually in the video. This is a combination of my being raised a Bible teacher and knocking on doors, converting people, being in the Marine Corps and becoming a drill instructor, and then of course my own educational journey. I had 4 kids. I worked full time and I did not have a lot of time, but nor did I have the ability to take out loans. And so I needed to have guaranteed grades so I could get scholarships. I had great instructors and I came up with SOAP. We use acronyms in the Marine Corps all of the time. And so it's my formula and I'm the author of it. And what is its name? Its name is SOAP, Self, Opinion, Audience, and Purpose. That's it for lecture 1. I will post lecture 2 as soon as I do it.